Okay, are we live? Okay, so can I be heard? Okay, so can I be heard? Okay, I'm coming through live and well. So here we are, Godzilla minus one spoiler talk. Just having gotten out of the theater to see it a while ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Hey Chad, for me, it's easily a top five Godzilla movie. It was just that good. I mean, it's legit. Oh, I like Shin Godzilla, but it's not even on this. They're not even in the same league. It's that good. We get this shared out a few places. But this, it's like a great drama in and of itself, even removing Godzilla from the equation. So the film begins with a nice shot over water that's a little bit of a callback to Godzilla versus Destroyer because opens up it opens up. Yeah, it was amazing. Hey, interval. It opens up over water like Godzilla versus Destroyer. We have a kamikaze pilot landing on an airstrip, Odo Island. Great callback to the first film. And it's like right at the end of World War II. He talks with this mechanic, and we see a shot with these fish in water, which these fish are said to precede Godzilla. Nice nod, I think, to Arigo. It really went into PTSD and post-war, and yeah, oh yeah, it really did. This film is a masterpiece. And anyway, we get Godzilla to attack the garrison on Odo Island, and the mechanic tells him, "Get to your plane. The 20 millimeter gun should be able to kill it." He freezes up. Godzilla kills everyone except him and the mechanic, and we see him go home. This is after. Oh this Godzilla, even the pre-nuke Godzilla, was absolute nightmare fuel. Nice to have you guys in the chat. And he's coming home post-war Japan. Tokyo's been firebombed. Oh, I'm gonna get to that atomic breath. You want to talk horrifying? But he comes home. His neighbor's actually mad at him. My kids are dead. You're a kamikaze. How did you come back alive? They're dead because of you. He has this encounter with this woman with a baby. It turns out the baby's not hers. The mother was killed in the bombing and asked her to take care of the baby. And these two, they just stay together. They take care of the baby. The neighbor that was mad at him even helps, and they become this kind of pseudo family unit. We finally, he's hesitant to be the girl's father, and he's hesitant to accept he loves this woman because of the PTSD from the war. In that for him, his war isn't over. He ultimately takes a job destroying mines from the war, and of course the girl's terrified. She doesn't want to lose him. He's like, no, it's safe. They have a specially built boat. It turns out the special boat is wooden because of the most of there's a lot of magnetic mines. Yeah, a tree boat. So the wooden boat is technically safer. And we get some nice scene with the people on the boat. One of them used to design weapons. One of them's a younger guy. And just these guys bond, and it's nice to just see this friendship form as well as this pseudo family unit. There's a scene where they're all having dinner together, and they take a picture of the girl, and like the little girl, she calls him daddy, and he's just not ready again because of the PTSD to embrace being the father. And we get good performances. Like when Godzilla's not on screen, you care about each and every one of these characters. We see the test at Bikini Atoll and that Godzilla was there. The boat crew was the best gods. Oh yeah, I agree. That was the best Godzilla team. The old man and the boy. And anyway, then we get some more stuff like the and I'm kind of going to mention some stuff out of order because I just seen the movie, so it's rattling in my head. But the girl, she gets a job, and you can tell she's kind of wanting to go out on her own because this relationship isn't going anywhere, but she doesn't want to leave him either. And then we get ships start getting destroyed and they're sent out. We see a wrecked naval ship, and the guy sees the fish and he's like, it's Gojira, Odo Island. And he remembers what happened, and they have two mines on the boat. And Godzilla shows up, and we get this great scene where you've seen it in the trailer, they're running from him, firing the gun, and they ultimately drop a mine. It gets in his mouth and blows up, and like it actually blows when they shoot it a part of his face out. Now it was close to the wooden boat, so our main character catches some shrapnel, but Godzilla regenerates the damage when it looks like they're about to get killed. A naval vessel comes, and we just see Godzilla treat this ship like a toy. Even though they blast him, they're able to do damage, but the damage keeps healing. Godzilla gets under the boat and shoots the atomic breath and destroys it. And the guy, our main character, wakes up in a hospital. The government's not saying Godzilla's heading straight for Japan because they don't want to panic. And this is when the girl gets the job. And we also see a scene with him having a nightmare and how just traumatized he is by the PTSD. And it was just extremely well done. The tree boat def gonna survive the big battleship. Yeah. And anyway, it's progressed at a great pace. Like, I don't care when Godzilla's not on screen because I care about these characters. And we get to Godzilla finally coming to shore, and of course, it's on the same side of the city as the girl who took the job. And let's see, he was apparently on screen for 10. Yeah, he felt like he was on screen throughout the movie. But I love that and that's the sign of a movie being done well, when the title character or whoever isn't on screen, but even when he's not on screen, you feel his presence. In his pre-nuke appearance on Odo Island already made him the stuff of nightmares, and you're just scared for when he shows up. And when he shows up in Tokyo Bay, it plays the Godzilla march from Mothra versus Godzilla from the 60s, one of my favorite Godzilla movies of all time, and my favorite rendition of the march. It was an emotional moment, plus just Godzilla, he was just pure nightmare fuel in this scene. You're seeing boats and trains just flying like they're toys. It really sells the power and destructive nature. At this point, we're in full-on horror movie territory. The girl, she just so happens to be, I think her name was Naoko, she happens to be on the train Godzilla attacks, and she has to let go and fall in the water to survive. And eventually they meet up and they're trying to get to safety, and we see the tip of Godzilla's tail light up blue. And I love this atomic breath because the spikes extend as he's charging his atomic breath. And when Godzilla shoots it, it doesn't necessarily, it's not like the typical destructive beam we've seen. He shoots it, it hits, and it's a mini nuke. We see a mushroom cloud form, the shock wave. I mean, this was just the stuff out of nightmares. And the girl pushes him into an alleyway as she sees the shockwave coming. And we see her get blown back and just the damage Godzilla does. And the guy comes out, he looks in the direction she was pulled, and she's gone. We don't see her, and we get this great scene where he just has this absolute moment of grief and horror. And it was a great performance. It was just heartbreaking to watch this. And again, the actor's performance, you don't need to know the language. This scene, it transcends language barrier. It's just a guy screaming in anguish. And I mean, it breaks your heart for him. And we get into the aftermath, as well as the neighbor basically telling the little girl, your mommy had to take a job far away because the girl's looking for her. And the little girl breaks down crying. And it's a scene that just breaks your heart. We get to, this is what I love. It's a civilian effort to take down Godzilla because the JDF really isn't a thing yet. And we get our tree boat crew together. They start formulating a plan, and the plan is to lure Godzilla to this trench and use Freon to freeze him, pull him down, and if need be, there's a plan B with balloons where they pull him back up, and hopefully the rapid decompression will kill him. It's a well thought out plan. And the main character's like, we're going to need a plane that can keep him distracted, and he's looking for redemption. Eventually they find a old unfinished prototype of a jet plane. Only a few of them prototypes were completed, but they need someone to work on him. So he starts trying to find the mechanic from the beginning of the movie who was also mad at him for not shooting the guns at Godzilla. And he actually writes him some letters, which we find out later. He's blaming the guy for what happened on Odo Island. Somehow the pressure plan A made Goji big scary. I guess it somewhat died, but regenerated. Good. That's a good way of looking at it. And I like, oh yeah, that's a good comparison. They were like GMKIs. Like this Godzilla actually probably surpasses that Godzilla for being mean and ruthless. But the mechanic shows up and he tells him, I wrote those letters because director did take inspiration from 54 and GMK. It shows this movie feels like a legitimate, true remake to 1954. And I'm going to say it's easily in my top 5. It was that good. And the mechanic agrees to go along and they start going over the plan. And there's a nice scene where they're talking about their country's history. And they're like, our country has had a thing with death for too long. We built fighters without ejection seats. We didn't worry about casualties. We used kamikaze pilots. We planned for people to die. This time, we're planning on everyone coming home alive. And as it's done, the youngest guy on the boat, he has a wounded arm. And the elders, they tell him, you're not going to be a part of this operation. You're too young. He's like, but I want to fight. And they're like, one even tells him, you've never known war. That is a beautiful thing. That's a wonderful thing. You should be proud of that fact. But he just feels his friends are abandoning him to go to fight and not do his part. And you kind of feel for this guy. Our main character goes and spends one last night with his adopted daughter. And then he leaves a note and money with her for the neighbor to take care of her because he's actually planning on dying. And it's a beautifully emotional moment. This movie does have scenes that will bring a tear to your eye. The performances are that strong, and they have a plan where they're using a recording of Godzilla's roar to draw him. Also, the mechanic was mad at him, like how he found forgiveness through. I like how he found forgiveness through his hate. Yeah, that's great. How so many of the characters come full circle in this movie, and there are redemption arcs for both the main character and the mechanic. And Godzilla, unfortunately, he shows up ahead of the plan. So our main character, he takes the plane, shoots at Godzilla, and lures him to the trench. The ships are able to surround Godzilla with the Freon stuff, and it clings to him. They set off the Freon stuff, and it's a tense scene. Another great scene with the Godzilla march playing. The music in this movie was just it's God's actual Godzilla music. It was so good to hear. It actually works. They pull Godzilla down, but it's not working. So they go to plan B, but Godzilla actually chews the balloon so they can't pull him up fast, even though they have him hooked up to cranes. And when it looks like it's lost, a bunch of smaller ships come, being led by the friend they left behind, who's now the captain of one of the ships. And all the smaller ships hook up to the naval vessel, and they start pulling the vessel, pulling Godzilla up, and he comes to the surface, and it looks like even plan B's gonna fail. The cap the We see our main character come, and he actually we see the plane fly into Godzilla's mouth with the bombs. It explodes his head, and it's a great shot where we see the atomic energy beams come out of him, and he like disintegrates. And I left the scene out, but I'm bringing it now. There's a scene where he's talking with the mechanic before he left, and it's like funny how now there's a part of him that wants to live. He lost the woman he loves, and he's got a daughter he wants to come back to. He even has a drawing she drew of the three of them, as well as he puts in the cockpit of the plane, he puts the girl's picture. This remind him this is what I'm fighting for. And we know he did object. The mechanic actually built an ejector seat into the plane, and we see, and this is where again the forgiveness comes around. When he built the injector seat into the plane, that's the mechanics forgiving him and telling him you need to live through this. And it was a beautiful moment. They get back to the store, and the neighbor who got a telegram why he was gone gives it to him, and it turns out Naoko was still alive. He runs to the hospital. She's bandaged up. She's presumably blind in one eye because of the bandage over her. She's got her arm in a sling, and she asks him, "Is your war finally over?" And we have the three united as a family unit, and it was a very touching, emotional moment. I figured she was dead. It was a nice touch that this man can finally have what he had rejected for all these years and what he thought was taken away from him by Godzilla. This was movie was the civilians coming together in saving the day, which was also a nice touch in true to life, because in a lot of disasters, it's the civilians that are the unsung heroes that help help relieving their neighbors in their area, helping dig people out of rubble, sheltering people. And it was a great touch. This film, doesn't portray Japan as the heroes during World War II. It shows the shame and PTSD the survivors have had from the war, but it also shows them. Godzilla is a metaphor for overcome in this. He's not just the metaphor he's always been, but Godzilla is the metaphor for overcoming those past traumas and becoming something stronger. Like I said, it's the civilians at the end of the day that saved the day. And I thought it was a very inspiring and uplifting message. This movie really, it took me through a whole gambit of emotions. There's not a moment where Godzilla's on screen where it's not awe inspiring. I should also add, we see his carcass regenerating at the end of the movie. I know Toho said they want to do their own cinematic universe, and this is a very strong first step. I hope they keep this serious tone. And, it was just, it's, it's a absolutely word. Yeah, I do too. Like, I like Force of Nature Godzilla, which is just what this Godzilla was. And you can tell he has the anger and hatred towards humanity after the atomic bombing. And just like I said, the symbolism, his atomic breath that it causes many atomic blasts is just really, it's a really effective scene. Like when he ever Godzilla's on screen, we are in full on horror movie territory, and it's the way it should be. As much as I liked Shin Godzilla, it has its problems. This is the movie I wanted Shin Godzilla to be. It was mature, it took itself seriously. There was some humor in certain moments, but it was more just true to the scene rather than just a stupid joke at the end of a drum heavy moment to soften the blow. There are moments you will cheer, like when the younger guy on the tree boat crew shows up and saves the day. Shin was destructive, but the movie in general was more boring. I think it was interested all the way. Yeah, Shin Godzilla, it was really it's got its positives, but it's got its negative. It's such a critique of Japan's political system that if you're not if you're not a Japanese citizen, a lot of the political themes in that movie are just going to go right over your head. Where this movie, it has things anyone can relate to. Anyone. Why didn't we get Shin Godzilla true cosmic god form? It just would have been too powerful, I'm guessing. I mean, at the end, he was evolving past the weakness of just having one body. But just, again, this film just had more relatable themes and messages. Listen, if you take Godzilla out, you still have an absolute solid, dramatic movie. And, I wouldn't have this film any other way. This Godzilla film, it really takes its rightful place alongside the best Godzilla movies. My top five, Return of Godzilla 84 is my all-time favorite, followed by the original Gojira 1954. Three and four can flip flop, but as of right now, the 60s Godzilla versus Mothra, followed by Godzilla versus Destroya. In number five is Godzilla minus one. This film deserves to stand side by side with the best Godzilla movies. Nah, there were really none that annoying. their action scenes. Not like the gamer kid annoying either. Yeah, and even the little girl, like this, she was so young that you're not going to be able to do too much with a child actor that young, but the way they used her in the film, it was effective, and this wasn't an annoying child actor. She was actually very genuine. I thought, again, like, you can only put so much on a child that young in a film, but they knew how to bring out the emotions in her, and it worked. Like I said, this was a very near perfect movie, and I'm amazed I got to see it in the theater. It was like so last minute for my theater because I kept checking Google. Maybe my local theater will get it, but hickory, 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 even as early as this week, I would check and it was still hickory. I asked the guy at the theater, and apparently they didn't find out they were gonna get it till yesterday. I give it a 9.5 out of 10. The point five is because not enough Godzilla dilemma. Yeah, it would have been honestly if that's like the one thing, and this is me just grasping at straws for a complaint. I wished his appearance in Tokyo would have gone on a little longer, but CG's obscenely expensive, and this CG was really good. With a 15 million budget, I can't really complain too much. No, and you would think the budget is much higher. This CG was it wasn't perfect, but it was top quality. I didn't really feel like I was watching a video game cutscene. Everything feels like it has real weight to it. Like when we see the trucks or buses flying as Godzilla's kicking them, they you can feel their weight as they're flying through the air. When the trains go flying, they feel like they have weight to them. From Godzilla 14, 150 mil, probably because of actors. Enough said. Yeah, I'm sure Bryan Cranston didn't come cheap for that movie. And like this was really for me dream come true. I always wanted to see an actual Toho Godzilla movie in theaters on the big screen. When that Toho logo was on the screen, I had the biggest smile on my face, and I was just along for the ride. The moment where it actually really hit me and actually set in, wow, I'm actually watching a Toho Godzilla movie in theaters, was when he showed up and it was the Godzilla march from Godzilla versus Mothra playing. Like, I had got teary eyed for that scene. It was the first ever Toho movie in my country. It was mind blowing. Oh, what's your country? We've had others, but my theaters have never got them. And as great as Godzilla King of the Monsters was, oh, okay. You're Andreas, aren't you? You're Anders. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. But yeah, we had a. It was actually. Don't ask me why I said Andreas Anders, but yeah, we've had others, but my theaters have never got them. And it was just everything like about this movie. The pacing was great. You don't feel like again like, but the U.S. got Shin. We did. Yet some places in the US got it. My local theater sadly didn't. But this movie actually felt very real, even real. Yeah, my theater never like gets anything good. Even this past summer, Jaws or was it? I forget when it was. Maybe a year ago. Yeah, it was last year. Jaws was re-released in the theater for its anniversary. I was looking forward to go see it. My theater did not get it because Spider-Man No Way Home was re-released. I think this was a 50-meter Godzilla, it looked like. He was the same size as the 54 Godzilla, which I think worked because back in 1954, like Godzilla, a 50-meter Godzilla, and this is taking place in the 40s, a 50-meter Godzilla was easily the tallest thing in the Tokyo skyline, where when they came back in the 80s and 90s, even a 100-meter Godzilla wouldn't be the tallest. An 80 to 100-meter Godzilla wouldn't be. Oh, yeah, I'd love to see an Aliens re release. I'd be there opening day, but 100 of 80 to 100-meter Godzilla did look more imposing, even though there were buildings significantly bigger than him. And then we've had 120 plus meter Godzillas. We've had the anime Godzilla, which was gigantic, like the size of a mountain big. But this one, back in the time, he was a nice 50s. 84 Goji was the first to reach beyond 50. Yeah, that was when they went with 80 meters. Then he was 80 meters in Godzilla versus Biolante. And every film after that, he was 100 meters until we got to the Millennium series where his height got a little screwy and he would be anywhere between 55 to 80 meters. And then Final Wars, he was back to the 100 meters. There was never a consistent height. Yeah, that nuclear sub really, he was really juiced from that nuclear sub. But yeah, the 50-meter Godzilla it worked just fine for this movie. And I do think that anything like bigger, 80, 100 meters, it just would have been too much. I kind of wonder, like, because they want to do more films, where they're going to go from here. This is just me, but I'd love to see a Godzilla Raids Again remake next. It was a perfect pseudo remake where it was a remake that did its own thing. It was actually set a few years before the original movie, but it was still in that same general time period. Japan had no real defense forces yet. And, it was like a nice time period and kind of a refreshing way to address Godzilla where there really isn't much military to meet his defense. Yeah, I agree. Anguirus does need more love, and I'd like to see another Rodan standalone movie. Also, this was earlier. Also, this was the earliest they ever did Goji before 1954, which again, it was kind of a brilliant move when you look at how they did it. Yeah, the plane scene did kind of have some Rodan vibes, and again, our pilot, just how skilled he was to keep avoiding Godzilla. Bikini Atoll cites 10 years in the original movie before he makes a movie. It's kind of funny that back when we got the original Godzilla movie, Tomoyuki Tanaka was just trying to fill a gap in a release schedule because they were supposed to do a movie with the Malaysia, and it was supposed to be a co-venture of a war film called Beyond the Glory. the US occupation just ended so they could do this movie. Tanaka wasn't wanting to make Japan out to look like the heroes of the movie or anything, but because of the tensions post war, the movie fell through. There was also the Lucky Dragon incident with the fishing boat that got too close to the nuclear test. And that stuff came together to inspire Godzilla, which, hold on a minute. I actually just recently picked this up. It's the translations of the original novelizations written by Shigeru Kayama, who was commissioned to write the story treatments for the first two movies. Again, it's pretty cool so far. Like the first chapter, we actually see the destruction of the first boat through the point of view of one of the people on the boat. Only thing I don't like about this book, it's got kind of a matte finish and it's textured. I'd prefer a gloss that feels smooth, but it was a film made to just fill a gap in a release schedule. And here we are 70 years later. They're still making Godzilla movies. We're still talking about Godzilla. And this is up there with those more emotionally powerful and effective Godzilla movies. It is so worthy of the legacy of the original movie. And I just realized like my beard on the camera looks more gray than it does in real life, where I can only see two gray hairs. But you know, we got something just really special. This is easily my favorite movie that came out this year, and I like how a foreign made film on a very small budget by Hollywood standards, for me at least, blew everything Hollywood put out this year out of the water. This film has as much artistic merit. The director wants to make a Star Wars film. I swore I'd never watch Star Wars again after what Disney did to it, but if he got to direct a Star Wars film and Disney stayed completely out of his way, I would go see it. Jedi Grand Vale. Hey, Walter, how's it going? I've just been here for the past almost 40 minutes just gushing on how awesome this movie was. I took my mom to see it, and she even really enjoyed it. But yeah, if he got to do a Star Wars movie and he was given complete creative control, I would go. Personally, I hope he's at least involved in future films. It's like I had mentioned before, Jedi Grand Vale, Walter got here, that I actually want to see the next film. I want to see them do Godzilla Raids again in a remake of sorts, give Anguirus some love. And, just maybe just trying to think, what would be a favorite part for me? Probably the tree boat scene, because there was just a lot of tension. Oh yeah, I'd love to see. Well, Bagan finally got a figure release, so we might be closer than ever to seeing him in a movie. Personally, I think if they're ever gonna put in a Japanese-made live-action Godzilla Gamera movie, have Bagan in it as something for them to come together and fight. Blessed, my favorite scene would probably be their encounter with Godzilla in the boat. But Bagan, but how is he gonna look? He had so many designs. The figure that they just released of him, I'd take that design and just streamline it. And like another, like for me, great scene, Super Godzilla. He's not the Super Godzilla Bagan, but he is a very similar design. The colors are different. And like it was just an amazing film. Hopefully, this director wants to direct Star Wars film. I'd let him clearly understands the way to tell a story. Yeah, and he also knows how to not just constantly beat you in the face with a message. The There is some political commentary in this film, but it's very minor, and it's more political commentary towards that specific time period in history, like the guy mentioned. Our country hasn't concerned itself with life for too long. We've built planes without ejection seats. We've planned on casualties. We've used kamikazes. This time we're planning on everyone to get out alive, and it really is treated as a just it's like it's a redemption for these people who fought through World War One, who survived and were not necessarily the proudest of what happened during that war. My second favorite scene is probably when they left their friend behind and they tried to tell him, "You've never known war. That's something to be proud of." And they're telling him, "Look, your job is to live for the future for us." When they could see past their horror, there was gotta be better than, oh, let me say that. When they could see past their horror was when they got better, which in itself, yeah, exactly. And I think in a lot of ways, this isn't just Godzilla at its best, but it's just any kind of science fiction or fantasy movie where it uses this outlandish premise to tell a really human story, which is exactly what this film did. There is plenty of messages in the film, but they flow very well in the movie, not being too preachy. Yeah, it's like the director knew, okay, I only need to push this issue this far. Like he knew just when to pull himself back. The best cast of humans, period. I don't remember have so good humans, but I have not watched other Goji movies in years. These characters, I don't know, I might put them, I think they're close to, they're on par with the characters in the first film. It's still very hard to beat Dr. Sarazawa, especially the prayer for peace scene where he agrees to use the oxygen destroyer. It's a wonderfully powerful and emotional scene that was done, I really well. And there has certainly hasn't been a Godzilla movie this emotionally effective since 1954, which again, it's another great accomplishment. I think this film even it might be a eye opener for some more casual fans, especially this younger generation of Godzilla fans who, even though they call themselves fans, won't watch the older movies. I think they were kind of surprised to see how emotionally effective Godzilla could be. It's weird. I have to keep going back to 1954 because this is like, even though I put it as my top 5 favorite, if I'm moving bias out of the side, this might be the easily the best pure movie since 1954. The director, from what I understand, he already got a Best Director award for this movie, which was just well and rightfully deserved. And again, it's like I think the door's more. I'm more excited for what they're going to do for the future with this continuity than I am for the next legendary film, Godzilla X Kong. Has potential. That being said, I'm not going to watch any of the trailers. I'm going in completely blind. Japan shows woke Hollywood how to make movies, the small company movies, better than blockbusters will never stop being. Yeah, it's impressive when you have this. It's really a David and Goliath type scenario. But again, it's amazing how much the little guys are doing better. This past October, a Friday the 13th fan film, Never Hike Alone, came out, and that movie, fan film, crowd-funded, was better than a good number of the actual studio produced Friday the 13th. So yeah, Hollywood is starting to get upstaged by the little guy because they don't have studio execs as in their face. They're not worried about pushing a message. They're just here to tell a good story. And I think Hollywood really needs to sit and take notes. You don't need to get political. You don't need to get preachy. Don't be woke. Just tell a good story. You can incorporate a message into it. And as long as you don't feel preachy, you don't feel like you're beating people over the heads, they'll accept it. FNAF movie ate the Marvels and the Flash. Yeah, what that's actually kind of impressive in its own right. I haven't seen it yet. I want to. I'm not really a fan of the games, but from what I hear, the Five Nights at Freddy's fans have loved the movie. And you know what? If it's something that the fans love and it was clearly made for the fans, even if I don't like it, I'm happy for them. It more into the book version, not the game version, by the way. Okay, I knew about the books, but I wasn't sure if they were connected to the movie continuity or not. But yeah, this movie it was just so pleasing. See, and I have to say, from a Gojira film, I never imagined to feel so much emotion from viewing. I cried a lot during the third. Oh yeah, that the the pilot plot focuses on the books more than the game, which makes it. But yeah, that third, the especially the scene. Okay, Walter, the scene with the atomic breath where we saw. I talked about it earlier. We saw the girl push him into the alleyway, and her get pushed back from the atomic blast, and he comes out into the and he just sees the destruction, and we just get that moment of just raw grief. It was just so it worked on such a visceral and such a primal level. Even the younger guy who was upset at being left behind, you're kind of emotional because on one part you're glad his life's not being in danger, but on the other part, you feel for him because he doesn't want to be the guy left behind while his friends and colleagues are out there risking his life, risking their lives. It was just such, this was an extremely emotional third act. And I don't think a Godzilla movie, there's only two other times where Godzilla movies have really reached this kind of emotional level, and that was the original Godzilla and Godzilla's death in Godzilla versus Destroya. Like I said, it's got just as much artistic merit as it does entertainment. At its core, it's a great drama film with Godzilla as part of the backdrop. That shows how strong characters matter. Yeah, in strong acting performances on top of that. you can say you can say Godzilla got his mind blown away by their yeah, he did. He actually did. But that was even a nice touch how regenerative this Godzilla was. Our conventional weapons of the time are actually able to do damage to him, but he just heals too fast for anything to last. It was creative. It took ideas from earlier Godzilla movies like Godzilla 2000 with, depending which translation you're watching, Regenerator G1 or Organizer G1, but just elevated it even with pressure, how somehow regenerated, but not like zombie got he but not like got zombie. I guess because his eyes got blown out from the pressure. Yeah, even just how creative that plan to take him out was. It was like they actually put a lot of thought into the plan, and just the effects and camera angles, like that scene when the two ships literally come this close to each other. It was like you could just, they're like, don't crash. You could just feel the attention, the weight of the ships. And again, it's something I like that in a lot of American movies is sorely lacking, where the CG just doesn't everything feels weightless. In this stuff felt like it had the heft in weight it should. They really took the time and care to make this movie, and it was absolutely a great effort by everyone around. I can't brag on this movie enough. Any complaints I can come up for this movie are just grasping at straws that realistically aren't even there to begin with. This, for me, it's as close to a perfect movie as you can get. And it was a real cinematic accomplishment. It was everything it needed to be. It was the Godzilla movie I always wanted to see. It had times where it felt like a horror movie, times where it was a touching family drama, times where it was a thought provoking story about PTSD. You get people coming together. It shows how, like, no one man can do it alone, but if we all come together, if we all put our differences to the side, we can do anything we set our minds to. Just really good stuff, emotional stuff, entertaining. I mean, I'm wondering, not that anyone cares about the Oscars anymore, but we all know this film's going to get snubbed, even though it deserves it. This film should really be in the running for Best Picture. And, wouldn't that be something to see a Godzilla film get Best Picture? I'm not saying it's gonna happen, because it's probably not. I can almost guarantee this film is gonna get snubbed, but it is what it is. I'm getting close to winding up here, but before I go, I do got an unboxing of this guy coming up, and it and I feel real film lovers needed this. It's a good storytelling with good, exactly. But I got an unboxing of this guy coming up, but I had got him on sale on Amazon's Black Friday, the Joy Toy Warhammer 40K Rabute Gilliman. And this dude, he just feels like quality, like the paint, the heft of the material. But yeah, you're right, Walter. This is a film that, like, if you're a lover of cinema, if you're a lover of good storytelling, you owe it to yourself to see this movie. it was really truly something special that sadly you just don't see anymore. When I go to a film, I want to get invested. I want to care about characters, but in Western movies, we get these sad, two-dimensional characters that are just hard to get behind. And with this movie, like, even if I can't tell you much about the characters, some of the characters, the film does a good job making them all feel like they matter, all feel like they're legitimate people. Even from the beginning, the encounter with the neighbor that you were supposed to die, you were a kamikaze. It's because of you, my kids are dead. And when he meets up with the lady with that kid, it's that same neighbor who steps in and helps them to help that kid survive. It's people overcoming their grief, their anger, their hatred, in achieving important things. That neighbor kind of, in effect, becomes a pseudo grandmother for that little girl in this family unit and helps them, and they all become significant parts of each other's lives. And it was just really just emotional. And I said, when Godzilla's in screen, it's horrifying, it's awe-inspiring. You're just in awe of his power, of his strength, and just the nightmare fuel that this Godzilla was. Like, if those of you that have seen it, Anders, Jedi, Grand Vale, Walter, Godzilla's atomic breath in this movie. Oh my goodness, that was horrifying. It was mini nuclear blasts, mushroom clouds included. I mean, you're just kind of there, just jaw dropped, all struck in horror at what this Godzilla is capable of. And it was just such an impressive feat. Godzilla felt like a true force of nature, as he should be, because to me, Godzilla, he isn't good or evil. He's a force of nature. And I want to see that carry over when he fights other monsters. The way I look at how Godzilla should be treated is he's a force of nature. Even when he's fighting another monster, he's going to cause trouble. My analogy is, imagine a forest fire meets a hurricane. Yeah, in theory, the winds and the rain from the hurricane could extinguish the forest fire, but how much damage is the hurricane going to do while the rains extinguish that forest fire? And I feel a real film. Yeah, I read that already, but that's it. Godzilla's a force of nature. Keep him at that. Make the characters likable and relatable. This is the template for how Godzilla should be treated in the future. Good, likable characters in Godzilla as this force of nature. Make the destruction horrifying. Get us emotionally invested, and people are gonna love it. And like I said, I do think this is destined to be considered one of the greatest Godzilla movies of all time. It really does deserve its place right next to the best in the franchise. It's easily my favorite movie of the year, and I didn't think I would personally find anything better than Oppenheimer, which, funnily enough, in some ways, you could almost look at that movie as a prequel to this movie. I mean, you can watch up to the part where they drop the bomb on Japan and end it there and put in Godzilla minus one, and they'd really play off one another. But again, it had that real world feel. I love even the way they captured the look of devastated post war Japan and the reconstruction. As a history buff, there was stuff that felt like they were right out of the history books, which couldn't be better. This film delivered on, like I said, everything I needed it to do. And I know at this point I'm just rambling, but it's been an hour. Chad, Anders, Walter, Interval, everyone that stopped by, it was nice seeing you. Um, that's a very interesting side note with Oppenheimer. It was actually Anders that pointed that out to me, and I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? Oppenheimer can be a sequel, but like, share, comment, subscribe, guys. I'll see you later. Over and out.